Welcome to the Patton College of Education's new Munch and Learn series, Global Issues on Immigration. Through these discussions, we seek to increase our understanding of others in order to advocate for and build more inclusive communities. The intersection of immigration and higher education is long-standing. It is important to understand how current immigration challenges and policies are impacting our students and campuses and communities, and determine how best to support them. Why should we prioritize support for undocumented students and international students? According to the Center for Higher Education Leadership, first-generation immigrant students, including undocumented students, second-generation immigrant students, and international students make up close to a third of all students in post-secondary education nationally. Bringing it closer to home, Ohio University's Athens campus and the Patton College have international students enrolled at over 4%. Many first and second generation immigrant and international students look to see whether campuses and institutions are undocu-friendly. In other words, are we welcoming, inclusive, and supportive? How institutions and colleges of education respond to immigrants, international students, and their families matters. Much can be done to be an inclusive university and to demonstrate our support for these students. But as with any students, we need to avoid one-size-fits-all approaches to advising and student support. Instead, we must develop culturally responsive and integrative student-centered care. According to NACADA, a global association for academic advisors in higher education, a culturally responsive student support and advising approach considers social and psychological conditions that affect this particular student demographic. Undocumented immigrant families face constant economic, social, and legal challenges. They increasingly experience the psychological impacts of being a cultural but not a legal citizen and may feel like they are living in limbo, not fully belonging anywhere. Only a small percentage of undocumented students actually pursue and successfully complete U.S. post-secondary education. And those who do make it to college have overcome great odds and have built above average resiliency. According to NACADA, best practices for building an inclusive culture involve creating a network of support, creating safe spaces to enhance peer and ally support, ensuring confidentiality and campus safety, and providing outreach and resources, including critical legal support and promoting civic engagement. As we begin our discussions on global issues on immigration, know that this series aspires to address these best practices to encourage meaningful dialogue. While we are talking about best practices for higher education, we must particularly employ these practices in colleges of education. We are preparing the next generation of teachers and human service professionals who will also need to provide culturally relevant support and services to immigrant children and families. Recent demographics from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Pew Research Center shows that in 2012, there were 11.4 million unauthorized immigrants in the United States, or 3.5% of the nation's population, from which approximately 2.1 million were K-12 aged students. Our nation's past practices and how we treated children and families who are seeking to come to the United States for a better life have not been representative of who we have historically been as Americans. We have a responsibility to turn the page on that sad history. On the day of his inauguration, President Biden did just that. He signed an executive order to preserve the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Program, otherwise known as DACA, which has shielded hundreds of thousands of people who came to our country as young children from deportation. In the words of Miriam Feldblum, co-founder and executive director of the President's Alliance on Higher Education and Immigration, if we're to think broadly about the impacts of immigration across our campuses and act collaboratively, locally, and nationally to support students and other campus stakeholders, we will be in a position to effect positive change in the short and long term. It's the right thing to do, it's the wise thing to do, and it is at the core of our educational missions and communities. Thank you for joining this session on global issues on immigration.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Davidson, and I am an academic advisor in the Patton College of Education, and I will be your moderator for today's discussion on international students and immigration. This discussion will focus on international students and immigration, and it is the third of a four-part series on immigration sponsored by the Patton College of Education's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. As we get started, let me start by letting you know that today's event is being recorded, and a recording of this session will live on the Patton College's YouTube channel. Also, let me provide a few additional instructions for participation. First, we invite you to place any questions you may have for the panelists in the chat, and we will get to as many questions as we have time for. That said, due to the limited time we have together today, we may not get to all of your questions. Second, at the end of the session, an evaluation will be placed in the chat, and we encourage you to take a few minutes when the event concludes to provide us with feedback about your experience. Our panelists for today's event are Mr. Kyle Butler. Kyle is an associate professor of instruction, pathway coordinator, and an advisor to the Ohio Program of Intensive English Program. Kyle has been employed at Ohio University since 2013. Our next panelist is Nanang Gunawan. Nanang is a PhD candidate in the Counselor Education and Supervision Program. Our next panelist is Lorraine Kubukile. Lorraine is a PhD candidate in the Counselor Education and Supervision Program. Our next panelist is Nicole Lopez Yantui. Nicole is a master's student in the Hospitality and Tourism Program and is also a member of the Patton College of Education's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Nicole will be graduating this spring. And our final panelist is Jennifer Nisevich. Jennifer is the Associate Director of International Student and Faculty Services. In this role, she oversees student immigration, compliance for Ohio University, and leads the International Advising Team. Jennifer has been employed at Ohio University since 2016. Now that you've had a chance to briefly get to know each of today's panelists, I'd like to allow each of them to give you some additional information about themselves. Nanang, could you please share some additional information about yourself? And please be sure to mention your country of origin.
Hi, my name is Nanang Gunawan. I'm from Indonesia. I took my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling and rehabilitation counseling in 2011 and 2013. And now I'm doing my doctoral program in counselor education and supervision.
Thank you, Nanang. Lorraine, would you please share some additional information about yourself?
Hello, My name is Lorraine Kubukile, and I'm from Botswana, which is in the southern part of Africa. I had the privilege of being sponsored by the government, and I was able to attend Old Dominion University for my undergrad and did my master's at Alliance Graduate School of Counseling. And now with the privilege of having a graduate assistantship with Ohio University, I was able to be sponsored for my doctoral studies.
Thank you, Lorraine. Nicole, would you please share any additional information about yourself?
Yes, my name is Nicole. I'm from Quito, Ecuador. I came to the United States in 2018 to start my master's degree. My undergraduate studies were in ecological tourism back in my country.
Thank you, Nicole. Kyle? Kyle is a faculty panelist, and Kyle, please share some additional information about yourself.
Thank you, Kelly. And I also want to thank Dean Middleton and Dr. Mona Robinson for having me here today for this panel. My name is Kyle, and I was born and raised right here in the great state of Ohio. And our student panelists today are graduate students. And so I work primarily with international undergraduate students here at OU. And so I'm going to do my best to speak today to the undergraduate student perspectives.
Thank you, Kyle. And our final administrative panelist is Jennifer. Jennifer, please share some additional information about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. As was explained, I work in the International Student and Faculty Services Office. I've been doing work like this for nearly 17 years now, and I'm very happy to share my experiences.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Now that you've had a chance to meet all of our panelists, let's start with our first question. This first question is for our student panelists. Students, how did you prepare to study in the United States? Please share any research on the US you may have done. Did you watch any videos, listen to any music, and/or what did you do to prepare financially to study in the United States? And let's start with Nanang.
Thank you. In Indonesia, our language is Bahasa, so English is English not my first language. So I need to improve my English skills in that time before I decide to go to the United States for studying. While I'm preparing my English skills, I also applied for scholarships, and I was granted by Indonesian government scholarship to pursue my study in the United States. But now I'm doing my PhD with GA or graduate assistantship at OU. And I look for information for the accredited program in counseling or counselor education program in the United States through websites, through videos, or through any publications that mentioning about the counseling programs in the United States. And finally, I found that one of the most relevant specialization of my focus in my study was at OU. So I applied to OU, and here I am. I'm at the completing my doctoral degree now.
Excellent. Thank you, Nanang, and we're happy to have you here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, Nicole, could you please respond?
Sure. My first language isn't English either, and Ecuador we speak Spanish, most like in all South America. So I started studying English since I was like 14 years old, and I was a former English teacher back in my country, so I did have to prepare for the English exam as well. Also, I did research from many universities, and I thought Ohio University was the best option because they offer scholarships for graduate assistants. So I applied. I contacted the graduate coordinator for my department for my master's for my program. And she also mentioned the scholarships and all the resources that the university provide international students. So I also started saving. As I mentioned, I was working, so almost all of my payments were saving for the test and the visa applications. And once that I applied and I was notified, I had to start also saving for the ticket and housing and all the new things that you encounter when you're traveling to a different country.
Thank you, Nicole. And you've done well. You're here and you're graduating, so great job.
Thank you. Yeah.
Lorraine, your turn.
Yes, so one of the requirements is to take TOEFL examination, which is an English exam. So I had to take that, and also the GRE was a requirement. So I had to prepare to take those two exams. What I did was I prepared three years in advance. So I actually started looking for schools early, and I actually also visited the US to see what kind of institutions I could apply to. So I didn't visit Ohio University, but I heard about Ohio University through an alumni, and also through one of the professors, Dr. Robinson, who was visiting Botswana at that time. So, I think the fact that she came all the way to Botswana made such an impact on me and got me interested in the program. So I started reading about the outstanding and prestigious program in counseling. So that's how I prepared for my time here in the U.S.
Excellent. Thank you, Lorraine. And let's give a shout out to Dr. Mona Robinson for her recruitment efforts internationally. And thank you all students for responding, for your excellent responses. Jennifer, could you please talk about the extensive visa process that precedes students' arrival in the United States?
Sure. So getting the offer of admission is actually only the first step in a multi-step process for international students who want to come and study here. Once students receive their admission, they're required to submit financial documentation proving that they can cover the tuition and living expenses for the first year of their program. That's actually a federal requirement before the university is allowed to create immigration paperwork for them. Once the students get the immigration paperwork, the next step is for them to pay another fee. It's called the SEVIS fee, and that is going to a government agency that actually maintains all of the immigration records. Once they've paid that fee, they have to schedule a visa appointment, which includes another fee. If the students are fortunate, they can go to a visa appointment that they can drive to or take a bus. Some students, though, will have to travel to the other side of their country to get to the embassy, or in some cases, they might actually have to leave their country to get a visa appointment. And so that's also an additional expense that students encounter. Once they apply for the visa, well, when they apply, they get about roughly 2 minutes to speak with the visa officer to make their case for why they want permission to come to the country and study. 2 minutes is not a lot of time, and so it can be challenging in some cases for students to be able to get their point across so quickly. Assuming that they are approved for the visa, the next step is often a security clearance, which is a background check. These are usually completed within 2 weeks. However, there are some more extreme cases where they can take a month or a couple months, or we've seen some extreme cases where it can take up to 5 or 6 months, which could impact a student's ability to actually start the program at all. Once the security clearance comes back, the student receives the visa. It's a sticker that goes in their passport. We call it the visa stamp. And that is not actually permission to enter the country. Getting the visa stamp means you have permission to present yourself for entry to the country. What that means is you have permission to board a flight to the US and to come before a immigration and customs enforcement official at the airport. And that person has final say on whether a student will be allowed to enter the US. Now, if the student has all of their paperwork, it's very rare for them to not be allowed in, but there is some uncertainty up until the point they actually arrive at the airport as to whether they'll be allowed in. So it takes all of those steps before students can even think about arriving on campus and starting all of the work involved in actually setting up their lives here.
So are you saying that a student could potentially get to the airport to come to the States just to find out that they're not approved?
It's very rare, but it is a possibility. Yes, there were a few isolated cases about a year and a half ago where some students did encounter that. But again, it's an isolated situation, but it is possible.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for that insightful information. My next question is for our student panelists. What would you say is the most challenging thing about being an international student who is studying in the United States? And I'd like to ask Lorraine to respond to that question first.
Yes, so I think one of the most challenging things is being away from loved ones and family and friends. So it's important to establish new networks when you're a new student, and also just personally speaking, I've had to deal with relatives passing on and not being able to grieve properly and having to deal with that emotionally can be very challenging. But the support systems here at OU have really made a difference. And I had the support that I needed on this side.
Excellent. Nanan, could you please respond next?
Yes. At the beginning, I need to adjust a lot with my English because it is really different when we learn English in my home country. We learn formal English, but then in the reality here, a lot of types of English that maybe we will not learn. We didn't learn in the class. So I need to work on that, and I need to learn on that. But I joined the speaking class at OP. That was really helpful. We were trained to familiarize ourselves with English expressions, local expressions, and dialects, and something like that. So that's one thing that I learned a lot to improve my skills. So my indication was whether could I be confident watching an American movie without a subtitle beneath of the screen. So yeah, more and more and step by step, I'm getting confidence to watch a movie without subtitle. And then the second challenging thing is about culture. As maybe Lawrence said, that we are far away from home. We need to show support here, but lately I'm with my family, with my wife and my daughter here. But still, our families is still Indonesia. But then after that, I think what we need to adjust is with how we interact with culture, how we build connections with people, whether with international students, Indonesians, or American people in general. So I think in these dynamics, we need to understand about ethics, regulations, about the daily life and all that stuff. But I think that the involvement of ISFS always facilitating students' needs to accommodate our maybe challenge during our study in United States is really good, and also the support from professors. For example, like we have Dr. Robinson here, and they always support with students, international students, to continue their study, to complete their study, and I think that's good support that we got when we are pursuing our study at Ohio University.
You know, and you mentioned the OPI program, which is an acronym, and I'd like Kyle to respond to what OPI is and some of the services that they provide.
Yes, OPI is the Ohio Program of Intensive English. That's the program where I teach. And so we provide, it's exactly what it sounds like. We provide English language courses for international students. We provide some courses that are for like pre-enrollment students. I think Lorraine, Nicole, and Nanong all mentioned working on taking the TOEFL test before they arrived. And so we, for students who haven't earned the score that they would need on the TOEFL test, we have English language classes that students can take. But I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later on during the discussion. But OPI is the Ohio Program of Intensive English.
Thank you, Kyle. Now to go back to our previous question, Nicole, are you able to respond to what would you say is the most challenging thing about being an international student who is studying in the United States?
Yeah, for sure. Personally, I agree with Lorraine. Being away from family members has been really hard for me because I'm from a very close family. And I think with this problem also comes communication. You have to be mindful of downloading apps or using technology to make sure that your family knows that you're doing okay, that you can communicate with them every day. And also, I would say that another challenge was imposter syndrome. That's when you feel like you doubt yourself, you doubt your ability sometimes. So at the beginning, I was a little bit lacking my confidence, I would say, but I think with the support of my classmates and the classes and the professors and my advisor, especially Dr. Chang, has been really helpful to build that confidence and actually kind of like overcome that imposter syndrome.
Thank you, Nicole, and I'm glad you are not succumbing to imposter syndrome. We accept you and love you just as you are. Now, our next question is for our next question is for Kyle and Jennifer. What kinds of support systems or what types of support services are available to international students who are attending or who are planning to attend a university in the United States? Kyle, could you please respond to that question first?
Yeah, sure. So when I think in terms of resources for academic support, especially what we have here at Ohio University, one center that's been really helpful for my undergraduate students that I work with is the AAC, or the Academic Achievement Center. That is a center through Ohio University Library, which offers a range of academic support services. And a few programs that have been really helpful. One is the Student Writing Center, which provides like one-on-one tutoring and support for students who are working on writing in any class that they may be doing. And I will say for OU students that the AAC's Writing Center, I think works primarily with undergraduate students, but there's also a graduate student writing center, which comes through the graduate college. Another service that the AAC offers is peer tutoring, which is, it's a little broader than the writing center. It's one-on-one tutoring with a peer. It's free of charge, and it works for a variety of courses, particularly courses that are really high enrollment, like general education courses. And the third thing that the AAC offers, which I think is really special and really unique, is called supplemental instruction. And what this is it meets once or twice a week, and it's designed around a lot of like math classes, general education math classes, but then a few other kind of high enrollment general education classes. And once or twice a week, you can meet with a group of your classmates and a peer leader. And they do a variety of like exercises and practice activities that get people working together to study whatever they've been learning in class. And so it's a great way for students to like review the concepts they've been learning. But also for international students, it's a little bit more of like a low stakes kind of, group study, like social atmosphere. Where you can not only kind of be reviewing what you're learning in class, but also kind of meeting some of your classmates, which I know can sometimes be a challenge for international students. The other main types of support services that I think are really crucial for international students, and a few of our panelists have already mentioned this, but English language programming that universities can offer. So as I already mentioned, I am a professor with the Ohio Program of Intensive English, or OPI, is what we call ourselves. And so we at OPI, we're a nationally recognized ESL program, university ESL program. We've been at Ohio University for over 50 years, and we are one of the oldest intensive English programs in the nation. And so we provide a range of coursework on English language, reading, writing, speaking, listening, all the way, from our elementary level, which would be students learning basic English, basic sentence structure, all the way up to the program that I teach in, the University Success Pathway program, where we actually take students who are ready to start taking their first credit-bearing OU courses, and we take them into those courses along with their ESL work. We also offer social and cultural programming with things like the International Conversation Hour. We have a Conversation Partners program. And to me, one of the best resources that we offer are our OPI advisors, which is also one of my roles. And as an OPI advisor, we tend to be kind of the first stop for international students. If a student doesn't know where to go, which is often the case when you are living and working through another country's system, you often just don't even know who to go to ask a question. And so we have the OPI advisors set up so that if one of our students needs help and they don't know where to go, they can come to an OPI advisor first, and we will help them, or usually we will actually kind of forward them on to the person they should be talking to. So those are some of the things we offer. Ohio University also has a program called the Academic and Global Communication Program, or AGC. It was formerly known as ELIP, and they provide also a range of English language coursework for like fully enrolled students, and particularly their graduate student programming is excellent, and they're another nationally recognized program. So we offer so much in terms of support here at Ohio University, but I would be remiss if I were to talk about all this great support we offer at Ohio University without also sharing a concern which is on my mind, which is that roughly a year ago, due to budget cuts here at Ohio University, through non-renewals, we've actually lost 80% of our English language faculty. And so that means, that I have many colleagues who are currently in their terminal year, working very hard. And these are colleagues who've been working a decade or longer to develop our programming here at OU. And so, OPI and AGC are these wonderful nationally recognized programs. And my concern is that if we really want to be able to continue supporting international students to the level that we've been at Ohio University, some of these faculty need to be retained rather than let go at the end of this year. Thank you.
Thank you for that information, Kyle. What can we, as audience members, do to support the need for more English language instructors?
Thank you, Kelly. I didn't expect that question, but it's a good one. I think, speaking up about it is a good thing, which is what I'm trying to do right now. Another thing, with the recruitment that we do internationally, it was mentioned that Dr. Mona Robinson, Lorraine mentioned that Dr. Robinson went to Botswana and helped recruit. And so I think, the better we're doing recruiting internationally, that supports the kind of programming that we do. And I think the last thing I'd like to mention is that, so it's really important to know that to come to Ohio University and start studying, you don't have to have that TOEFL score yet. A lot of international students are focused on getting the TOEFL score before they arrive, which is fine, and people do it for various reasons. But it's possible to come to to OU to get your I-20, which is an attachment for your visa that Jen could explain better than I could, and start coursework within OPI without getting that TOEFL score yet. And if you're an undergraduate student, you actually never need to get the TOEFL score, because if you're an undergraduate student, you can come to OU, study with OPI, go through our US Pathway program, and with that, just by earning certain grades in your OPI classes, you can become fully admitted to Ohio University without ever having to submit a TOEFL score.
Wow. Well, thank you for that information, Kyle. Jennifer, just to remind everyone what we're talking about, what kinds of support services are available to international students who are attending or who are planning to attend a university in the United States?
Well, I think that Kyle gave some great information, and I second everything that he said. I'm going to talk about some of the non-academic types of support. The first thing I'll mention is the International Student Office. At Ohio University, we're called International Student and Faculty Services, but these offices exist on every university campus. And our role is to work with international students. We actually oversee the visa issuance and compliance for the university. And so our role is to help students understand the various immigration rules they have to follow, what types of work authorization they can apply for, how to prepare for travel, and how to invite visitors to come visit them. So anything having to do with their immigration status or just adjusting to a new culture, to the US system, the International Office is there as a resource for them. And students should definitely get to know the advisors in that office. Next one I was going to mention is student legal services. And a lot of times when students hear about this, they think, I'm not going to get in any legal trouble. I don't need to worry about that. And the student legal services is something that students have to pay a per semester fee. It's a very small fee, and that gives them free access to attorneys then throughout the year. And we highly recommend that students pay that fee, not because we think they're going to get in legal trouble, but because the most common reason that students go to student legal services is for landlord issues or roommates contracts, things like that. It has nothing to do with getting in trouble. It has to do with needing a resource once you're here. Another resource that's very important for us to be sure students are aware of is counseling and psychological services. Because if you're a new student, a new international student, or you don't have to be new if you're a continuing student, you're in an unfamiliar culture, you're away from your friends and family, you're trying to adjust to not only being a full-time student, but perhaps doing it in a language that's not your native language, maybe family pressures from back home, so many different issues that students are trying to work through. It can be really helpful to have someone to talk to. And so the counseling and psychological services, or CPS as we call them, again, most institutions have an office like this, and the whole purpose is to give students support to help them work through any problems that they're having. So we want to make sure that all students are aware of that important resource. And then the last one I'll mention is at Ohio University, we have an organization called International Student Union. It's a student-run group. It's an umbrella organization, and it's made up of all of the individual country-based or region-based student groups. And this organization, during a normal non-COVID year, would be having programming throughout the year. And a lot of well-loved Ohio University traditions are under the purview of International Student Union. For example, our annual street fair, which we've really been missing. Hopefully next year it'll come back. But if a student is here and they're trying to figure out how to get involved, how to meet other students, maybe from their own country, maybe just other students who may be dealing with some of the same challenges that they are being in another country, then joining International Student Union or any of the member organizations is a great way to do that.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. My next question is for the entire panel. Please name one or two things that international students can do to adapt to life in the United States. And I'd like Nicole, if you could respond first, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, in my case, I think that one of the most helpful things that you can do is join a group that has something in common with you, like, for example, the International Student Union. In my case, I joined the Graduate Senate. I'm a representative for my department, Human and Consumer Sciences, and I also am a member of the Latin Student Union. I think that that's a great advantage of Ohio University. They offer a lot of groups that you can join, other clubs that you can join. Might be something like music that you like, or maybe something academically related. So I think that's great. And another thing that also you can do, and I think that this is very important, is that you don't have to be afraid to ask. If you have a concern, if you have a question, you can ask the advisors from ISFS, or you can ask other classmates or your professors, your advisors. They're going to be really helpful as well.
Thank you, Nicole. Now, you mentioned ISFS. Could you please mention to the audience what ISFS stands for, please? Yes,
as Jennifer mentioned before, International Student and Faculty Services. they are mostly in charge of helping international students, especially I would say I learn a lot during orientation, and they provide that as well.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Now, Lorraine, are you also able to respond to naming one or two things that international students can do to adapt to life in the U.S.?
Yes, immersing yourself into extracurricular activities is very, very important, like striking a balance, and also just practicing self-care is essential in the effectiveness of a student. So I'm a part of African Students Union, which is an organization which brings all the African students together, and that has helped me to form a family away from home. So we have different events that we do, and we meet on a weekly basis to discuss different issues, and that has helped me to really keep me balanced and healthy.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Extracurricular involvement is essential, and I am so glad that you're taking advantage of that opportunity. Nanang, could you please respond?
Yes, OU has long history with Indonesians, and we have like a community in Indonesia. We have like alumni, like unions, something like that. And since we have long tradition and we share stories decades by decades, then I feel like I have connection with this university, with this area. And then because one of the things that I feel that I have connection is that the international community. So studying at OU feels like homey, I guess, so to speak, because we meet people with various backgrounds and we meet people with various cultures that we usually go together to the international events, like maybe, for example, like from Indonesian student organization, we call it Parmias. It's under ISU or International Students Union, and we usually before pandemic we had like international street fair that we just go together with a bunch of people from various cultures to share things, food and dance and many things that we can learn each other. So that I think that's kind of celebration of diversity that we have. And then I think that's what many students will miss when they leave OU. And the other thing that I need to emphasize here, that open for new experience, either that's for your personal purposes or professional purposes. For example, like involved in the international organizations or any organizations that helpful for your professional development, and then it will give you more connections with people to develop your personal and professional development.
Thank you so much, Nanang. Jennifer, are you able to respond to that question?
Yes, so there are a couple things. The first thing I'll say is utilize those resources that are available to you. Students who come to the US, you know that you get charged various fees, activity fees, student services fees, things like that. That means you're paying for all of these resources that are out there. So don't be shy about using them. That's what you're paying for. That's what we all are here for, to provide support to you. So, you know, especially things like professors' office hours. I think it can be intimidating to think, well, I need to go and talk to this professor, but is he really I'm gonna be bothering him? That's not how professors are going to see it. That's what they're there for. Again, it's what you're paying for. And then I want to build on something that Nicole said, which is to ask for help if you need it. In a lot of cultures, when a guest comes to the country, people go out of their way to make sure that they're taken care of very well. And in the US, the culture is just a bit different. It's not that anyone doesn't want to take care of people. It's just that in this culture, it's expected that if you need help, you're going to ask for it. And so I think sometimes students can be caught a little off guard by that. And it's important to know that it is perfectly fine to ask for help. Again, that's what we're here for. And if you don't say, hey, I need help with this, people may not realize that you're struggling. So those are the two best tips I could give.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Kyle, can you respond?
Yeah, sure. And I think that the other panelists have already spoken to this very well. And I second Jennifer on the office hours. I know that as a professor, I love it when students come to my office hours, and the professors that I work with, we're kind people. We want to talk to our students, and a lot of the professors want to support international students, especially. But I think since I'm last to speak, I want to kind of flip this question a little bit, because when I think about the concept of the international students, or especially the English language learners that I work with, those who are still working on developing their English language skills, thinking about how they must adapt to the system, to me kind of reflects like a deficit model of thinking about international students or English language learners in particular. We often, the discourse around English language learners and international students often revolves around their deficits and what they need to do, but it doesn't often revolve around their strengths and really the value that they bring as individuals and as groups. International students are by definition multicultural. They're bringing to the class multicultural experience of their home culture or cultures, and now the new culture that they're becoming a member of. And many of them are often multilingual as well, which brings with it a huge set of advantages, cognitively and otherwise. And so I think a question that we can ask ourselves, particularly as educators, as administrators, as classmates even, is how do we adapt to our international students? And so I think there's a lot of ways we could discuss that, but as an English language educator, I think about it through that lens. And so one thing I'm thinking, one way we could adapt to our international students is to recognize that English is a world language. It is not simply like our language for those of us who are Americans or native speakers of English. So I think one way to adapt is to really allow space for all dialects of English. It's very interesting for me to hear Nanang earlier mention that in Indonesia, when he was studying a very formal dialect of English, which is often what we kind of imagine as like the university classroom English. But that he was actually surprised when he got here to see that there were various forms of English being spoken, formal and informal. And I'm sure he encountered various regional dialects and things as well. And so when we think about, allowing for various dialects, various accents of English in the class, another one to consider is learner English. The fact that as linguists, we actually characterize the English of somebody who's developing those language skills as learner English. And another really kind of helpful concept that comes from applied linguistics is something that we call negotiation of meaning. The idea that whenever there's a situation and multiple people are communicating, it's not a simple matter of one person sending a message and another person receiving that message depending on the clarity of the message itself or the form of the message. It's about an ongoing negotiation between and among both or all parties. And so just having that concept in mind, I've found really helps you to kind of recognize that when you're communicating with someone and English is their second language, it's going to require effort on your part to make sure that that communication is successful. The effort does not all lie with the person who's speaking their second language. And one thing I try to really, what I've learned a lot in my experience as an English language teacher is to really try to get to what the person is trying to communicate and move beyond the words themselves to what I know from the context, from the situation, and from our relationship they're probably trying to communicate with me. And so really kind of being open and mindful of our part in making sure that, we're adapting to our international students and that we are, putting the effort and the mindfulness into our communication with all of our international students.
Thank you so much, Kyle. And it's important for all of us to remember, I'm a native speaker of English. However, there are parts of the U.S. that I visit and I don't have a clue what they're talking about, and they're speaking English. So colloquialisms are very real. And Nanang, you are getting a wonderful experience studying at the university, Nanang and our other student panelists, to learn about various colloquialisms within the English language. So great job. Our first question from the chat is, was there something that another institution you attended did to help this mission that Ohio could adopt? That is the mission of globalizing our university in the recruitment and the retention of international students. So if Lorraine, would you mind responding to that first? And if I need to repeat the question, just let me know.
Yes, can you repeat the question, please?
Was there something that another institution you attended did to help the mission that Ohio could adopt? So is there another university that you attended? Have they done some things that Ohio is not doing that you think Ohio could adopt to make this place even better and a more welcoming environment for international students?
I actually find that my experience at Ohio has been really unique, and I feel that actually Ohio goes out of their way to really reach out to international students. For instance, you know, at the when I was doing my master's, we didn't have the exchange programs that Ohio has, and I think it's important that people have students have exposure to other countries, and they can engage in those exchange programs. And also the international office having that office makes a big difference in just orientating the students and getting them familiar with the environment. So I think Ohio is doing a really great job. And also just having so many different extracurricular activities for the students to be a part of is a unique selling point for Ohio University.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Kyle, would you mind responding?
Yeah, thank you. And I'll start by agreeing with Lorraine that there's a lot that we're doing really well at Ohio University. You know, a couple of things that I think of, particularly as I'm a member of a few international organizations like TESOL, which is Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages, and English USA, which is kind of like a consortium for English language intensive English programs like my own. And so one thing I look at is in terms of like the English language programming that we do, we actually are situated and structured administratively better than most universities. One thing that we do really well is my program, OPI, the Ohio Program of Intensive English. We, in a lot of universities, it's kind of like administratively, it's like separated off into almost a separate entity from the academic programming of the university. Whereas at Ohio University, we function as essentially like a department within the College of Arts and Sciences. And so that actually allows us to be a lot more integrated into the academic work that's going on at the university. And it also allows our students to much more easily and seamlessly do things like, you know, take credit-bearing courses. And so that's a big strength that we have. One thing that I've seen, though, that other universities do, which I think could be really helpful for our students, and I'm sorry because I can't remember exactly which university it was that did this, but this was a conference presentation I saw about a year ago. At Ohio University, we have a course from University College. We all know it as UC 1900 if you're familiar with it. It's a learning community seminar course. And the idea of that course is it's like a 1 hour a week course. Usually freshmen will take it. And it's kind of like, I would describe it as like an ongoing orientation to both Ohio University and being, you know, a good university student. And it's done in a cohort model. And so at another university, they have a very similar type course, like a freshman kind of orientation course. And they have it specifically for international students, which is something we actually have at OU as well. But the one thing that they did really well is at OU, we have what we call our learning community leaders. And the idea is that it's an upper class student who will come to this class and assist a faculty member who's actually, the instructor of record. And they'll basically, what they bring is like the student perspective. And they work with the freshmen from an upper class student perspective. And in that role, they bring a lot of value that we as faculty just simply can't bring. And so this university would have a very similar setup, but with upper class international students. And so, and what that class had in particular was they would have like weekly discussions where the international upper class student would kind of lead the discussion among the freshman international students. And it would all be kind of structured around this idea of like, what's just like informal, what's going on with you? What are your concerns? How are things going for you? And what they found was that the international students were so much more open about sharing like what was going on with their lives, like what was really going on with their lives, with their fellow international student. And then that upper class person in that role could then kind of share that with with the faculty in the intensive English program. And so that's one thing that I think that we could do here at Ohio University, and it would be really easy to kind of structure it into some of our already existing coursework and some of our already existing structures.
That's a great idea, Kyle. Jennifer, would you like to respond to that question as well?
Sure, I'd be happy to. One of the previous institutions I worked at was, it's called IUPUI, Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. It's a very long name. But they had a program, we're starting to do something similar here, but the program that they had was called the International Peer Mentorship Program. And in that program, there was a staff of student employees who were paired with incoming international students. And they started this relationship early on, like from the point of admission, and they would be paired with specific students. And then that relationship would last from the time they're admitted through orientation and on through the first semester, so that the students always felt they had someone to turn to with questions, kind of like what Kyle was talking about. We are building something like that here. At Ohio University, we have our fantastic peer advisors, and traditionally they've helped with our orientation program and with helping students find housing and airport arrivals. And they're starting to adopt a model that's closer to the one-on-one relationship between the student and the peer advisor. And I think that by forming those relationships, it helps students to feel they have someone to turn to with those questions that maybe they'd be embarrassed to come and ask our staff. And they feel like they may have their feet under the ground when they arrive more than anything. So I'm really glad to see that we're able to develop something like that here, because I think it worked really well there.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that information, Jennifer. My next question, we'll talk about COVID, and all of us have been impacted by COVID. But our international students, I'm sure, have been impacted in a different type of way, being in the United States and not in their home country, and probably not able to get home to family. So students, how has the COVID pandemic affected you as an international student? If we could start with, let's go with Nicole.
Sure. I think the most challenging thing was during summer, because as a graduate student and a graduate assistant, you don't really get payment during summer. It's just covering fall and spring. So I think that many international students face the challenge of getting a part-time job in campus, because we as international students can only work in campus. So we didn't have really means to get a job outside, and we weren't get paid for our assistantship. So I think that financially was really challenging. Also, I say that the university really helped during those times, because they created an international emergency fund, and a lot of students actually received this part of this funds in order to buy groceries or pay rent, which are the main necessities that we were facing. In my case, I was also kind of like really concerned about family members back in my home country because a lot of them were having really bad cases of COVID. So I was really worried about it. And that's on top of your own financial issues, you have to think about your family financial issues. So that can be really stressful. But as I said, with a little bit of help from the university, I was more relaxed, especially after the fund was approved, I would say. And I think that that's also going to happen probably unless we're going to see a little bit of it during this summer with students not being able to fully work on campus. Just to mention that in summer, it's just a really challenging time naturally for international students. I mean, even before COVID, there are just a few job positions that you can apply in campus, but with COVID, the situation got worse and it's probably not gonna fully recover this summer. So I think that actually the fund, the raise fund for international students is going on. So if you can just look up it and you can donate to them, I think that would be a great help for international students.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Nanang, are you able to respond?
Yes. I and my wife are doing PhD, and my wife is doing PhD at University of Buffalo. And just before the university closure in that time, I went to Buffalo for spring break. And I left my stuff in Athens, and I didn't expect any maybe announcement or something that that related to the COVID spread at that time. So I brought nothing except my laptop and some other small stuff. So personally, maybe this is my personal opinion that because of the closure and the online system, I and my family can be together. Previously, I had to go back and forth between Buffalo and Athens every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And because of the COVID, then I stay in Buffalo since that time until now. But then I also had concern about my practicum, my classes, because I need to complete my practicum. I still have so many hours left to complete. And also the immigration issue in that time that made me concerned that maybe we had to go back home because of the situation and the immigration policy in that time. That university also worked on that. ISFS kept working on that and kept us informed. So in that point, I accept the situation because, okay, this is the world issue and we didn't have enough power to do something, accept the situation. In that time, I kept communicate with my advisor, Dr. Furman, about how the things going and about the policy of the department regarding to the practicum, internship, and the classes. And also I kept communicating with ISFS about the immigration issue, but finally we were allowed to take the class online in the whole semester. So yeah, I agree with what Nicole said, that the emergency fund was real helpful, especially to in that time I used it to pay my rents in Athens, and my friends took care of my belongings and kept them in his house, and it was really great. But then after that, I realized that this pandemic has provided us a lot of new learning experience that we have to do this online that we didn't expect before. So I think maybe in the positive side, I will say that this is the bonus that we can do, like education process with online, even though many people don't like it. But I think that it also makes me learn that how to do this stuff in online. Even previously, I didn't know what Microsoft Teams is and what Zoom and so all of that. So I realized that in the future, maybe there are some people, group of people who are more interested in doing their course online while they have to work, while they have to do something else, and then they still can do their education freely, even though they have like a lot of schedule that they have to do, and even they are in the remote areas. And I think this system has provided us a lot of learning lessons. So for myself, I'm in counseling program, then I realized that maybe this can be helpful for us to provide counseling services for those who are unreached. In Indonesia, we still have limited access for that, so we can use this system. So I think those are the points that I got from this pandemic.
Thank you, Nanang. And I can honestly say that I have definitely acquired some skills during this pandemic that I never thought I'd want to have. And so this change can be good, right? So this is a good change in the midst of a challenge.
Yes.
Lorraine, are you able to speak to that? To the question about how the COVID pandemic has affected you as an international student?
Yes, I can certainly attest to the fact that, yes, I've had to be resilient and learn how to do things virtually. I was teaching a class, and I had to learn how to use Teams and teach online. So that was a bit challenging, of course, at first. But, you know, with time, it's like exercise. It gets better as you go. And so that's one of the skills that I also had to learn. There was a delay with my internship, finishing my internship, but I managed to finish it. So it's just that, you know, with COVID, we had to use a virtual platform. I was doing my internship at the Counseling and Psychological Services, and so they were able to accommodate us, the students who were involved in their internships and practicums, to be able to finish the following semester.
Oh, well, that's a good thing.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that, Lorraine. Kyle, I think you might have some insight as a faculty member on how the COVID pandemic has affected our international student population.
Yeah, I just have one quick thing because I think the students have already really covered it well. And this is simply a practical matter to consider if you are a professor or a faculty member, and that is just in a few cases, you know, Nanang has mentioned that he is now studying from Buffalo. So just bearing in mind that you don't know where your students are when they're studying in your in your online class. And particularly if you have an online class that meets synchronously, like through Teams, Zoom, whatever, it's possible that you may have a student in a very different time zone. They may be 8 hours ahead, 12 hours ahead, 13 hours behind, whatever. So that's just kind of a practical matter to keep in mind. Potentially when you think about, you know, when you think about your synchronous class and you think about due dates and things like that. And the last thing, I just want to make a quick plug that if you're a faculty member and you have international students in your class, especially if they're English language learners, if English is their second language, I and a few of my colleagues from OPI, Aaron Schwartz and Becky Challenger, will be doing a video presentation and a panel discussion at this year's Spotlight on Learning conference hosted here at OU. And we'll be talking about how to make your online classes more accessible to your international students and to second language speakers. And what we will present will also apply actually to people for whom English is the first language as well. So.
Thank you so much for that information, Kyle. Now our next question will be for the student panelist. And what would you say has been the most fulfilling thing you have achieved being an international student who is studying in the United States? And let's start with Nanang. And if I need to
Yeah.
repeat the question, let me know.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, my laptop just a little bit freezing, but it's work now. It works now. I think I remember the first time I emailed a professor was to Professor Middleton at that time. It was 11 years ago, and I told her that my intention about applying to OU, and she referred me to contact Professor Vincent at that time. And it was kind of a dynamic process. And then I worked on my English and got scholarship and then came to the US. And as long as I remember that after I came back to Indonesia, then I had intention to continue my study to the doctoral degree. And I came back to OU, and this was a great things for me because I felt like coming back home. And I think the most fulfilling thing is that I complete my master's study, and then I survived in that time. And then now I also in the second year, and I passed the comms in the last winter. And I think those are the things that for me is valuable and great things for my achievement. And I hope that my involvement or my professional development will be improved by this experience, so that I can be involved more in the academic activities such as research and also conference and some other professional staff that I can work with after I got my PhD candidate and then I got PhD. So I think beyond that, being a student at OU is one privilege that I got. And this also not for me, but also for people around me, my family, and also these are the process that I have gone through long time ago, since long time ago until now. And I think that's why I'm grateful.
Thank you, Nanang. Lorraine, can you speak to that same question? What has been the most fulfilling thing that you have achieved being an international student who's studying in the United States?
Yes, I think being able to get excellent grades, despite the fact that there's so many challenges. I was invited to join the Golden Key Honor Society, which is an organization that is joined by students of academic excellence. And just being able to complete my internship, I think I've learned a lot. There's a saying that iron sharpens iron. I mean, I came in with a lot of experience, but I learned a lot because I came in with an open mindset, even though I had been working after my master's. So, and also just being able to finish my comprehensive examinations was a great achievement, and it's very fulfilling.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Nicole?
Yeah, I think that there are two things that fulfill me the most. The first one is being able to graduate with excellent grades and a great GPA. Has been amazing for me. And the second thing is that let other people know about my country. I got the chance to present about my country in different classes with the different students that I've been working with and the different professors I've been working with as a graduate assistant. And that has, I've noticed that they want to visit my country by the things that I said about it, by the things that I show them about it. So I think that actually makes me really happy, because most of them actually didn't really know about Ecuador until I told them about it. So that's great for me that more people know about Ecuador, that I'm representing Ecuador in a good way.
So are you saying that you may need to be hired by Ecuador's tourism division?
They better.
Excellent. Well, we have another question. Our next question is for the entire panel. What words of advice would you like to share with those who are working with international students?
And then hopefully before we leave.
And we'll start with Kyle.
Well, I think a lot has been said about this, so I'm going to try not to be too redundant. I think if I had to give one piece of advice to people who are working with international students, I think it would be this, that we think a lot about how to be culturally sensitive and cultural differences, and that's really important. And it's important to understand that, you know, there are many situations in which, you know, in which the way you're seeing a situation and another person who maybe perhaps comes from a different country and has a different background may be seeing it differently due to your cultural backgrounds. So that's important. However, sometimes we get a little, sometimes, you know, we need to balance that with recognizing that we're dealing with an individual as well. And so, you know, kind of learning about a person's country, learning about their culture, learning, you know, in general what you can about them is really important. But you also have to recognize that person as an individual and recognize that even if you know, if you learn one thing in general about the place that they come from, that may not apply to that individual person. And so, you know, there's always kind of a balancing act. It's, you have to keep both in mind when you're working with an international student, let's say. You have to be sensitive to their culture and recognize that where they're, you know, where they may be coming from is due to their culture or their group status, but also that they're going to be a unique individual who in some ways will reflect that, what you've learned about that culture, and in some ways they will go against that. So I think that's the most important thing, recognizing the person in front of you as an individual.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for that information. Jennifer?
I think Kyle took the most important message that I could share, but I think another thing to keep in mind if you're working with international students is to don't get so bogged down in the work that you're doing with them that you forget to learn their stories. So we have amazing students who come to this university, and sometimes I'll be working on immigration matters and I'm so focused on that I forget to ask, so what are you researching here? You know, what kind of background do you have? And when I do ask that, I learn that we have amazing people here. They've done things that astonish me in their history. And so just to take time to learn their story in addition to recognizing them as an individual.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Lorraine?
I would like to say that it is important to not fall into stereotypes, like not stereotype people according to maybe what they've seen in the media. Just accept a person for their individual differences and get to know who they are, you know, so that, you know, you get to know the person from a more personal level rather than from the stereotypical point of view. So yeah, just accept a person for who they are.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Just as we as Americans wouldn't like to go to another country and be stereotyped with some of the things that other countries see about Americans on television, we need to think the same way about our international students or international individuals who are coming to the States. So excellent point. Nanang? Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I'll go with Nicole next. Nicole?
I agree with what has been said about getting to know the international students, allowing them to share about their cultures is not only good for them to express themselves, it's also good for the other students to learn about other cultures and to be immersed in other cultures and just generally get more knowledge about different people. And it at the same time, it also enriches the professors, enriches the class in general, the university. So getting to know really well international students and allowing them to talk about their countries is really beneficial for everybody.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Nanang? Okay, while we're waiting for Nanang to come back, Kyle, I think you have some additional information you'd like to share with our audience.
Oh yeah, just some more thoughts about, I think, this question about what, advice if you're working with international students. So I think one thing is, so if you're here and you're watching us right now, then chances are you are someone who is at least somewhat knowledgeable about international students. You are probably, I hate to stereotype you, but I assume you're open to the concept of having international students here, and you're probably supportive of, the idea of the diversity that international students bring. And on, within campus and within our groups like this, we tend, we can get ourselves into a little bit of a bubble, and sometimes that can affect our perception of the situation that our international students are living in, and how open and welcoming it may be. And so it's important to remember that, with outside of our bubble, and even sometimes within the bubble of the university, the students may be experiencing something very different. Anything from, microaggressions to kind of, outright animosity, and they may also be facing, I think some other things that have mentioned here too, are sometimes our perception of international students either having a scholarship, or I've heard many times quite erroneously that people who believe that international students are wealthy, that they're coming here because they're wealthy to study, and some of our panelists have already spoken to the fact that that is not the case in most situations. So recognizing that our perception of what our students are experiencing in terms of the atmosphere and how welcoming it is, but also the types of struggles that they may be dealing with. What we think is happening could be very different from what the students are actually facing.
Thank you so much for that, Kyle. Nanang, are you back with us?
Yes, I'm back. My laptop is not responding. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, cool. I agree with all what panelists said regarding to how they need to talk with international students, and I found that a lot of beautiful things from the community at OU has already accepted international students, especially in the counseling program. I found that the warmth and the helpful response from the ISFS, ISU, OP, and also Patton College, where I mostly interacted with, has already been great. And I just want to emphasize here that international students have diverse characteristics that maybe they have challenged, or they need to struggle to do the adjustment in the university for maybe a couple of months or maybe a couple of times in the class and some other activities, academic activities. So I think here that what people need to understand is that sometimes the system is not really the same with our country, so that we need to adjust with the whole system here, and we need to work on that. And that's not easy part, because for example, like writing, it is really challenging for us at the beginning, and we need to work on that. So we need to invest our time, our efforts to do that, so that it can be accepted for our assignments, for example. So I think this transition is a little bit challenging for me especially, or maybe for other students. And I think faculty members or professors can communicate with students if they have some difficulties, or if they have some challenge to complete their assignments or something that is required for the class.
Thank you so much, Nanang. Jennifer, I think you may have some final remarks.
Well, I just wanted to address this question. I have a bit more information that's just from a practical perspective. If the person watching this is faculty, or if they are an academic advisor or a career counselor or something like that, you want to become familiar with some of the regulatory limitations that international students have to face. So an international student may not have the flexibility to go out and take this great job off campus that would look great on their resume. There are certain criteria that would have to be met for students to get permission to work off campus. They may not have the ability to take their preferred courses because during non-COVID times, they're limited in how many online credits. And so if there are a bunch of great courses this semester, but a lot of them are online, that's going to cause problems. So just get in touch with your international office, see if they offer any training or any resources that you can use to familiarize yourself with the regulatory limitations.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Excellent points. In closing, I would like to thank the panelists for participating in today's discussion. Thank you for sharing your time, experiences, and expertise with us. I also want to thank our audience for joining us today. The evaluation for today's event is being placed in the chat, and we encourage you to take a few minutes to give us feedback about today's discussion. A recording of this session will be added to the Patton College's YouTube channel by the end of the week. You are encouraged to rewatch the session or share the video link with your network of colleagues, family, and friends. We have also created a resource guide for today's session, and that resource guide can be found in the chat. The next and final event in the Patton College of Education's Immigration Series will be held from 12 to 1:30 p.m. on Monday, April the 12th. And the theme will be honoring and supporting the experiences of immigrant populations in university and community life. Thank you again for joining us. Stay safe, be well, and have a great day.